Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today we are going to do a couple projects. Probably take about a week or two before we put this camper away for the year. Obviously, our season is over. So what we're going to do is we're going to redo these shelves. There's three here that have issues. They're falling off of these cheap plastic rails. So we're going to take these rails out, these three shelves right here, and we're going to make a couple 1-inch square strips that'll go from front to back. We need 6 of those, and we're going to recut these shelves, make new ones, so they sit on top. They'll be a lot sturdier than what we'll do is from underneath here, we'll pre-drill the rails I'm going to make and the shelf, and then we'll screw them from underneath so you won't see the screws. And I'll just leave the screws exposed so the next guy who buys this camper, if we do decide to sell it, they'll see what the screws are, they can take them out, and they can readjust to whatever their needs are. But this is one of the problems we had traveling over the summer. There's a couple other issues we had, so we just tweak them as we break, make them better so they don't fall apart again. So this is one of the projects. The other one we did earlier was replace all the receptacles. They were factory. There was nothing wrong with them. They worked fine. The problem is they were dark brown. They didn't match anything anymore. And in low light conditions, you really couldn't see which way to put the plug in because they were too damn dark. So we replaced them all with a gray, which will match the rest of the colors in this camper. It'll match the carpet when we replace it, and just looks more modern, up to date. And then, of course, we're going to do all this tile right here. This is all coming out. This cooktop's got to come off. This hood's got to come off. Over here in the window, we got the blinds that's coming off, and then the valance. All that's going to come out before we even tear this tile off. So we'll be working on that and the shelving unit next couple weeks. We'll get that done. Earlier this morning, I winterized this thing. Used 4 gallons of RV antifreeze. It only took maybe 20 minutes, half hour. So it wasn't bad. So stick with us. We'll show you how we do it, what it looks like when it's done, and hopefully gives you some motivation to update yours. So the first thing we're going to do is take this door off. It gives me a little more space to work, and it just won't be in the way. Just makes life easier. So I'll get that out of here. Now we got space to work. All right, now we're going to take off these latches. There's one here on the bottom. That locks the door in place. Get that out of the way so we have space to work. Take these shelves out and start removing the cheap plastic rails that they call shelving supports or whatever the hell they are. They're plastic, they're garbage, and when the shelf bounces around, because it's a rear kitchen, they break. So they're kind of useless. Yeah, let's get these shelves out of here. We already got our measurements, so we know we start from the bottom and measure underneath the bottom one, the middle one, and the top one here. So we know exactly where they're going to go, because that works for us. It might not work for the next guy, but he can do his own if they decide to buy this thing, if we ever sell it. So I'll get these shelves out of here. These shelves are it's like a compressed cardboard or particle board or whatever it is, cheap stuff. They're probably 1/2 inch. So I'm going to make these 3/4 inch. I'm not going to use plywood. I'll use solid pine, something that's got some meat to it for support. And like I said, when I cut these rails and go front to back, they're going to be 1-inch square. So it'll be plenty wide enough to support the shelf, and it'll give me enough meat on the rail to screw the shelf up underneath. So that's important. These rails come out next. Finally. I'm not going to use any of these screws because they're tiny and they're kind of useless. Just take those out and throw them in the garbage. And these rails, they're all plastic, and they're have zero value. So we'll just throw those in the recycle bin, get rid of them. There's one. They're not even one piece, they're separate pieces. Now these screw holes will get filled in, sanded, and I will repaint the whole inside of this cabinet so it looks nice. There's that one. Yeah, you can see how cheap these are. And what happens is with the food on there, whether it's cans or box food or whatever, the shelves had enough space where they could move around, and it would just peel these things back and it would fall apart. The shelf would just fall down at an angle and totally useless. So recycle. All right, all the rails are out. I'm not going to show you everything I do because space is too small. There's not enough room for me to drill in the camera. So I'll show you as it gets done. I'll just explain step by step. It's pretty simple. So Phillips head screw on your drill, just unscrew them, take them out. Screws are useless, they're too small. You just toss those, and then the plastic rails, you just throw them in the recycle bin, and maybe it'll be tomorrow's water bottle or a fountain pen, who knows. All right, the next step is just sand all these screw holes. When you pull the screws out, it pulls some of the wood fiber out, and you don't want that. It'll get in the way. So we'll sand all those down, and I'll use this synthetic wood filler. It's made by Minwax, but you can use whatever brand you like. I'll fill in all the screw holes, so sand them down when they're dry. So obviously when I paint, you won't see any of that. And then once that's all done, then I'll take the measurements I did previously, and I'll start cutting these rails front to rear and start screwing them in. Of course, you could use a level, and you have to measure with your tape measure so you get them in the right spot. And we'll get that much done. All right, all the screw holes are sanded. They're all filled with wood putty. You just put it on your finger, just mash it in the hole. Leave it a little high because it'll shrink when it dries. And when that's all dried, we'll just sand it out. Probably not going to paint until after the shelves and the rails are done. Let's continue on. So we have the inside of the cabinet walls sanded and painted. I'm just going to wait for that to dry. While waiting for that, I went and cut some of these supports for the shelves. There's 6 of them. I pre-drilled them, and I countersunk the holes, so they will go in here. And we'll screw those up against that wall. There's one thing you have to keep in mind on this particular model, because the refrigerator is right up against the pantry. You got to make sure when you put these rails on this side of the pantry, you're not drilling into the refrigerator, because that would be a problem. So we'll let this paint dry, give it about an hour or two, then we'll come back and we'll tap these in place. I made them really tight. And I'll get my measurements. Those are important. Don't use a level unless you know your RV is 100% level, because if it's off level and you put a level on these to level your shelves, it's not going to be right. So use your tape measure, get some accurate dimensions, and go that way. That's the best way to do it. Good morning, everyone. Day 2 and the final day for the pantry shelves. So to bring up the speed, we got all the rails cut, pre-drilled, countersunk. We're going to get those installed today. The shelves are already cut, primed, and painted. So once we get these rails in, we're going to dry fit the shelves, make sure everything works the way we like it, make them nice and snug so they don't move around. Once we get that all done, we'll take the shelves out, we'll prime and paint the rails, put the shelves in, and the bulk of the work will be done. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make a couple trim pieces like this here for the 3 shelves down below, just so it looks nice. And we'll call that project done. And then tomorrow we'll start taking off all the peel and stick tile, prep the walls, and we'll start working on that project. Okay, so we got the first rail set up and ready to go. Just going to put in a couple screws. We got our measurements all set up. Alright, so 1 rail in place. We have 5 more to go. Alright, so we have 2 to 3 shelves pre-fitted. There's just enough space so when the wood swells, I can still take them out if I have to. So what I'll do is I'll get underneath after I do the 3rd shelf, and we'll pre-drill up through the rail, the support rail, into the shelf. And we'll countersink that and we'll attach it, and that'll be done. And then what I'll do with these edges right here is I'll make a trim piece so it kind of looks like this all the way across, just to clean it up and make it look nice. So we got 1 more shelf to do. Get the rails installed, pre-fit the shelf, and then we mark each shelf, bottom, middle, and top, just so if there's any little bit of a difference, they'll fit properly. So we'll get that done, pull everything out, prime and paint the rails, make a couple trim pieces, and that's it. I'll show you the finished product shortly. All right, the final push. The rails are in. Now we're just going to put the shelves in, pre-fit them, make sure they're okay. And then we'll prime and paint, screw the shelves down to the rails, and we're done. So let's see what we got here. Perfect. Perfect. That's what we want to see. Let's try this middle one. Oh yeah. And last but not least, the bottom one. Perfect. Good as new. Now we'll just make a couple trim pieces in here, 3 of those, and we'll glue them, and we'll get a brad nail or something, just put a couple nails in here, make this trim piece flush with this edge here, so it kind of looks like this. And maybe we'll do something with this one. We'll see what happens. That's just a piece of plastic from the factory. Probably take that out and make a new piece, just so it all matches. That's it. That is the pantry shelves. Get rid of the old plastic crapola from the factory and put in some real wood. So we'll never have a problem with these things bouncing around again and falling off. So I hope this helps. And stay tuned for the next project, which will be tile. Yeehaw, that'll be a fun job. Well, we're at the finish line. So you put in some trim pieces and prime it and paint it, and we are done with this project. These shelves will never come off again. Doesn't matter what kind of nasty potholes we hit, we're good to go. Let's put this trim in, get this pre-drilled so we don't split the wood. Don't want to do that. That would be a bad thing. So once we get these pre-drilled, we'll put some finishing nails in there, and then we'll putty the holes, let it dry, sand it, paint it. I should prime it first, and paint it. Set them, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it setting them. Take some of this putty, fill in that hole, move on to the next one. Make sure you put this in really tight, and you don't want it really flush. You want to have it a little mound because it will shrink. And when you sand it, it'll be flush. Well, y'all ready for the exciting reveal? The project is done. Shelves are in. Got the trim pieces on here, trim pieces up here. So now we're rolling down the road. We get to our next campsite. We don't have to worry about taking everything off the shelves, putting the shelves back in place, and then repacking it. These things will never move again, so we'll definitely take it for a test ride. And next year, when we hit the road again, I don't see any issues. So that is that. Project is done. Next project is going to be the backsplash, which we'll do might do in a separate video. We'll see. So hopefully this motivated you to do some work in your RV. They always need improvements and repairs, and it's a lot cheaper to do it yourself than to hire a tech or bring it to a dealer or whatever. You'd appreciate your RV a lot more if you do your own work, and it's fun, something to do. If you see us on the road, say hi. We appreciate you guys. We love talking to people, and we will see you next week when we do the backsplash. Happy camping all.